Excellent. Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started in about 1 minute. I'm just waiting for all of our admitted students to be joining us. I just want to say a huge welcome and congratulations, of course, for your acceptance to the MA in Climate and Society today. We have a phenomenal group of presenters joining us. So I think you're going to get a lot of information out of today's session and some really fun kind of evolutions in the programs that we're going to be announcing as well. So we'll be getting started momentarily. Again, welcome. And just as this is always my shameless audio check it for all of our students that are joining us today, if you don't mind typing in the chat box where you're joining us from. We love to see all of our accepted students joining us from all over the country and around the world. So I'll go ahead and get started and just know I'm joining from New York City. And again, we'll be starting in about 1 minute. Oops. So the chat box is disabled. My apologies, everybody. Funny enough, I was certain it's not disabled, but welcome Haley from DC. Excellent. Brooklyn, welcome Zoe. Seattle, Taylor, I'm so glad you made it today. Welcome. All right, excellent. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started now. Again, a huge congratulations to those of you who just joined us. My name is Alfred Ayub. I am the Director of Admissions here within Columbia Climate School. And today is going to be a broad overview for our admitted students entering this fall 2023, the class of 2024, so to speak, on the MA in Climate and Society. What you're going to be getting out of today's session is of course, an introduction to the climate school itself and a little bit more about the history. We're also going to go into quite a bit of detail in the Climate and Society program, what you can expect this coming year during the 3-semester journey by joining the program. We will also detail our phenomenal professional development opportunities, and then financial aid opportunities, and conclude with a free-for-all question and answer. So feel free to use that Q&A box. And then also, and I know many of you are familiar, Nick Klaus-Smith and Jillian Nash are joining us today, who are currently enrolled in the program and work closely with me. Quite a few of you have already had one-on-one appointments with them, which is great. They're also going to be assisting with the Q&A session. And if you have any kind of current student questions that you might be interested in, feel free to ask them. So who is presenting today? Joining us is the one and only phenomenal co-director of our program, Dr. Mingfang Ting. She will be giving us some opening remarks, followed by Professor Ting. Carrie Shimkus will be, who's our Associate Director of the MA Climate and Society. She'll be going over the program curriculum in great detail. We also have some really exciting announcements as it relates to our core curriculum, or as I like to say, the climate core, and some new evolutions within the program that are really exciting. Also, Kate Jenkins, our Senior Associate Director of Financial Aid in the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, is going to be detailing us for financial aid and what is available, especially the loan process. Gerald Contiago is also going to be detailing our professional development and kind of career resources. They are our career development officer and a phenomenal resource. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Gerald. They hosted an independent climate career session a couple of weeks ago. If you didn't get the recording, just let me know. We'll make sure that you have that. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Jillian Nash and Nick Klaus-Smith are also joining us, giving us a little bit more insight into housing, student life, and then of course the Q&A is going to be covered by them. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take a pause here, and I'd love to now transition to allow Professor Mingfang Ting to give some opening remarks and a welcome.
Mute. Hi, thanks, Alfred. Yes, as Alfred said, I'm the co-director of the Climate and Society program for quite a few years now. So excited to have this platform to meet you virtually in this way, and I'm hoping that we'll get to meet each other in person at one of those campus admitted students events soon. I guess there's one coming up tomorrow.
There's one tomorrow. So in fact, if any of you joining us are planning on coming tomorrow, Professor Ting's going to be on our faculty panel, of course. So we really look forward to hosting you if you are able to join us tomorrow.
Exactly. So I was thinking about, tomorrow I will be there in person at the forum. So hope some of you will be there. And I wanted to offer my, adding my hearty congratulations to all of you for being accepted into the Climate Society program at the Columbia Climate School. And as a faculty member, as co-director, and the admissions officer, admissions committee member this year, I had the privilege of reading some of your files, not all of them, obviously. And I have to tell you, I'm blown away by the outstanding achievements all of you have already achieved. And particularly, not only obviously you're all outstanding in your academic achievements, but also in terms of all of your climate stories, we like to say. How climate change, environmental issues have shaped your life to date and your family's life, and how you become interested in the topic and what brought you here to apply to the Columbia Climate Society program. And I want to tell you that we're very, very excited that you did that. As you all know, the Columbia Climate School, which is the slides up there, was funded for exactly the purpose of fighting the climate crisis that we are facing right now. And we need more of you, obviously, to be in that fight. And I wanted to say briefly, I think you probably already know, the Columbia Climate School was established in July of 2020, and about almost 3 years, not quite 3 years ago. And it was the first new school Columbia established within 25 years at that point. So you can see that we're in a very historical moment here. And it shows how important climate issue really is to all of us. And the mission of the Climate School is to develop and inspire knowledge-based solutions and educate future leaders for just and prosperous societies on a healthy planet. So that is exactly why you're here. You are the future leaders that we're really hoping to, you will join us and become that. So, and very exciting time to be here and work together with all of us here, like-minded people, to make our planet a better place. I think that is what inspires you to apply to the program, and which is really to make the world a better place. So welcome again, and I'm really hoping to see you here on campus starting in the fall.
Thank you, Professor Ting. So, with that great introduction to the climate school, we always like to go into a little bit of our climate history, and just note that while we are a new school, we were founded on a very strong foundation of longstanding institutions within Columbia University. And in fact, for those of you that are able to join us tomorrow, what's great is we are planning on taking a visit up to Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, which I think is a real gem within this wonderful campus. The idea that you have access to this 189-acre, beautiful campus up in Rockland County, New York. I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but in terms of the history, I always like to note that Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory has been within the Columbia University umbrella, so to speak, for over 70 years. This is the #1 ranked scientific institution in the United States, specifically for earth and environmental sciences. Many of our faculty members, including Professor Ting, are Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory faculty. It's a blueprint within Columbia Climate School. It's kind of a part of our DNA with that partnership with Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory. Many of our research centers are based there. And so for tomorrow's session, when we're going to go up there in the late afternoon, you're going to get a chance to see a couple of those centers. You'll also see a talk. But I always like to just stress Lamont Doherty is just a wonderful resource within Columbia Climate School. And in fact, Carrie Shimkus is going to be talking about departmental research assistantships, and many of our students in the departmental research assistantships actually do those at Lamont. So it's definitely something we're excited and looking forward to taking you there tomorrow for those of you that are able to join us. And then in addition to Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, from that, we birthed the Earth Institute. And the Earth Institute has over 700 environmental scientists, policy analysts, managers, lawyers, engineers. The list goes on of experts working on issues of sustainable development and environmental management. In fact, the Earth Institute developed many of the programs within Columbia University today, including the MA in Climate and Society when we were originally within the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. And so from Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory and the Earth Institute, we founded Columbia Climate School. So I always like to stress this is not a school out of thin air. This is a school that was founded with a really incredible foundation. In terms of the Climate and Society program objectives, it's to understand, analyze, and communicate. We can't emphasize that enough. Communicate and utilize climate information. You are going to gain exposure to interdisciplinary approaches to addressing the climate crisis, and then many of our students are coming to this program in a very kind of exploratory sense. They are very excited about taking a variety of electives across the university, and Carrie's certainly going to be detailing that opportunity. And then some of our students have a very specific goal in mind. They're very direct in terms of what they want to accomplish in terms of their elective journey. And we also have an exciting announcement as it relates to some specializations that are going to be offered in this fall semester. So stay tuned for that as well. Of course, in this program, you are going to be gaining professional experience. Gerald is going to touch on our summer semester, which is the ultimate transforming concepts into practice, whether that's through an internship or a capstone. And then something else that we really pride ourselves on, and I know Professor Ting, as chair of our admissions committee, prides ourselves on, is making sure that we bring in a diverse learning community, individuals. And when we reference diversity, it's from multiple lenses with diverse lived experiences, from diverse regions of the world, diverse academic backgrounds. So you are going to learn from each other in this program, absolutely. This is a snapshot of our students in this year's cohort specifically. So the class that's going to be graduating in 2023. I can't give you a snapshot for 2024 because not everybody is committed to enroll in the program yet, but to give you a little better sense of the program academic backgrounds, about 67% of our students in this most recent recent class have degrees in the social sciences. That's a fascinating evolution within this program. Traditionally, the program had the majority of students coming from the natural sciences and more STEM backgrounds, if you will. And interestingly, we've seen a growing interest in students from the social sciences. In addition, about 22% came from the natural sciences, and then the remainder of the pie was the humanities and engineering. And what's interesting is we're seeing a similar breakdown for this year's incoming class. In terms of demographic backgrounds, we've also seen an increased interest in international students entering the program. So this year's class, we have about 64 domestic students, or students that we classify as US citizens or permanent residents, and about 36% international students representing 16 countries. For next year, for our students entering in the fall of 2023, we actually anticipate a larger ratio of international students. We saw a sizable number of students from outside the United States apply and show interest in this area, which is absolutely necessary. Obviously, the climate crisis is a global issue. So now I'm going to transition over to my colleague, Carrie Shimkus, our Associate Director of Graduate Programs here at Columbia Climate School, to talk about the curriculum and what you have to look forward to over the next year and the exciting evolutions that are occurring.
Thank you, Alfred. Good morning or good afternoon, good evening for wherever you're tuning in from today. I'm very excited to be speaking with you about the Climate and Society curriculum and what you can expect over the upcoming year. I work very closely with our students on their requirements and registration. I work closely with our faculty, and so I'm very familiar with all of these classes, your requirements, and so can certainly speak to any of your questions around this. But I am excited to share some exciting shifts within our curriculum. But what you see in front of you should look very familiar overall. Our program runs fall through the summer semester, so there's core courses and electives that students embark on each term, fall, spring, and summer. So I'll go through each of these components in detail. So to start, the fall semester begins with our Dynamics of Climate Variability and Change course, and this is a course that really gets students up to speed quickly on what climate change is, the science behind it. It is a very challenging course, but I think students really enjoy it overall because of the subject matter. We are very excited that this upcoming fall semester, the Dynamics course will actually be following a flipped classroom format. And so we'll share more details in the coming months in terms of what that means, but essentially students will receive lecture information about the course in advance of the classroom time. And then within the classroom, there'll be more active learning experiences. So it sort of flips that traditional nature of the class. A very exciting component of this upcoming fall semester is the climate change mitigation course, which was an elective this past year, will now be incorporated into our core curriculum. And this will be great because it'll also be paired with our a revamped climate change adaptation course. So students will be exposed to these two pillars of climate change action together during the fall semester for an overall improved experience on this academic journey. So the mitigation course, just a little bit of detail on that. It will provide an overview of the tools such as technologies and policies that can be used to mitigate the impacts of climate change. This course is going to take an intentional multidisciplinary approach, weaving in concepts within STEM, policy, and other social sciences. And then alongside that, I mentioned the climate change adaptation course, and this is a revamped version of the managing and adapting to climate change course that has been part of our core curriculum up until now. And again, this is really to be paired with our climate change mitigation as looking at those two lenses of climate change action. So just to give you a little more context on the adaptation course, the previous course really looked at risk management and risk perception as a lens to create solutions around building resilience. This revamped version of adaptation will it'll provide a case study approach to explore the dimensions of adaptation across sectors and scales. So students will be exposed to a lot of different perspectives within law, anthropology, humanitarian aid, public policy, and so much more. So again, you'll hear me say a lot today, more details to come. We'll share everything you need to know for registration, courses, requirements as we near the summer months, so that you're prepared to register and embark on your educational journey this coming fall. And then to cap off the fall semester, you'll have 2 electives. So then we're shifting into the spring term. And one change you might notice here is the quantitative methods course, which was historically offered in the fall, will actually now be offered in the spring term. And we think this will be a great approach for students who are coming from a background that doesn't involve technical concepts or physics or statistics. And so now students will be able to get exposure to these concepts throughout the academic year, as opposed to being consolidated into one term, one very robust and challenging term. So I think overall that will improve the student experience and still allow students to gain that exposure to these topics. And so just a little detail on the quantitative methods course. It is, as it sounds, a statistics course. So students will be exposed to statistical concepts, and then you'll move into decision modeling. There is a lab component in this course, and so students will be able to utilize the concepts they've learned and apply it using climate information. And so the lab component will really tie together what you're learning in the classroom, and the programming system that is used for that course is R, so you'll have a chance to learn that system as well. Now, the other core course in the spring semester is the Applications in Climate and Society course. And this is an interactive seminar that is really intended to expose students to the variety of professional pathways within the climate field, because it is very broad and also always evolving. And then finally, in the spring semester are 2 electives. I'll go into electives in a little bit more in just a second. But overall, you're looking at 4 electives for at least 12 credits over the course of your fall and spring semesters. We'll shift into the summer as your experience to close out the program. Gerald will go into that in a bit more detail in a second, but essentially students will choose either to pursue an internship during their summer term or a capstone project. And in both those cases, there is a corresponding course so that students can really take this applied experience and integrate it into their program experience and tie everything together. So in looking at the year in totality, you fall through the summer, and your core courses amount to 22 credits overall, and your electives are at least 12 credits. Now, we say at least 12 because students can actually take up to 20 credits a semester without being charged extra tuition. So if there are courses you want to take outside of these 4 that are of interest to you, you're more than welcome to do that. Explore different topics, explore courses across programs and schools at Columbia. You're welcome to do that. What you see in front of you is more so the prescribed and required experience for students, but you're certainly welcome to do above what you see here. We can go ahead and go to the next slide. So I mentioned electives. There's a requirement of at least 4 electives or 12 credits. We're very excited to have started offering electives within Climate and Society last year. We offered a few there, and then this year we've added even more and expect to include more electives this coming summer and next year as well. And these are courses across a variety of topics offered within the program, and students can choose to explore any of these, focus in on a particular area if that's of interest, or take a breadth and depth of different topics. So what you see in front of you are offered through our program. And if you want to go to the next slide.
Absolutely. Can we just, I just want to give a shout out to the travel course from Columbia. If you'll notice, it's the final bullet that was in partnership with the Graduate School of Architecture and Planning. And I don't know if any of you guys, if you don't follow, please follow us on the Climate School on Instagram and Twitter, but there was a lot of promotion of our students traveling to Columbia as a part of that elective. So Carrie's emphasized, I want to just emphasize there, because Carrie serves on the curriculum committee too. They're developing so much dynamic opportunities within the climate school itself in terms of electives, which is really exciting. So just wanting to highlight that.
And actually, before you switch slides, if you can go back to the curriculum, there's
Absolutely.
one that you see at the top of that electives list, our regional climate impacts course. It was historically offered as a core course within the spring semester. It's actually being shifted to our elective curriculum next year. And so students, if you're interested in learning about the impact of different climate events on sectors at a regional local scale, you will have the opportunity to pursue that, but it'll be part of our elective curriculum as opposed to our core curriculum next year. So again, that's on our list of electives here. And to Alfred's point, we expect to continue adding courses to this list in the coming years. So now if you want to go to the graduate school or other graduate electives, so historically, climate and society students would take electives across other programs and schools at Columbia. You still have the opportunity to do that if that's what you want to pursue. So any course that's a graduate level course, meaning 4,000 level or higher, can satisfy the elective requirement. What you see in front of you are some of our more popular ones that students pursue, but really anything that you find of interest, you're welcome to pursue. And I want to note that, again, the elective requirement is what you want it to be. And so if you want to take all climate and society electives, you're welcome to do that. If you want to take only graduate electives offered through other programs and schools, you're also welcome to pursue that. The elective requirement is really your space and your opportunity to tailor this program to what you want it to be. So I encourage you to, take a look at our our directory of classes every year. I'm always excited to see the different classes that students find across other departments and programs that pertain to climate that I never knew existed. And, expect that to always be the case. So I'm excited to see what you will find on your educational journey here.
Excellent. And maybe toward the end, we can ask Jillian and Niklaus just for fun to share which electives they decided to take. It'll be fun to hear it. Although some of you guys already know, but we'll definitely ask Jillian and Niklaus to share their elective journey so far.
And so, along that theme, we're very excited to announce the opportunity for students to pursue an area of specialization next year. And, this is an opportunity for students to focus on a particular area, and this is to, gain tools and not a specific knowledge set, so that if they're interested within a career path within that field, they'll have that training. So the two areas of specialization that will be available to you next year are the disaster risk management, and this was created in partnership with our National Center for Disaster Preparedness, and the climate and built environment, which is offered in partnership with the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. Students will need to take 9 credits within these areas in courses from a designated list in order to graduate with an area of specialization. So details on what that would look like, what the courses will be, and how to declare this will be shared with you closer to the semester start next year. But I do want to emphasize that this is available to you if it's of interest. If you are definitely interested in pursuing a career within disaster risk management or within planning, this will be available to you. But if these are not your topics of interest, or if you want to use your elective space to explore a variety of topics, this is not required. So you can feel free to disregard, but this is available for those who would be interested in pursuing it next academic year.
Awesome. Yeah, and just to note that we've got a lot of feedback over the years from students interested in maybe having a specific specialization in the degree program. So this evolution is just, as Carrie noted, an exciting opportunity if you wish to explore it. If you are interested in going deeper in disaster risk management or in climate in the built environment. Thank you so much, Carrie. Carrie had the most exciting section of the presentation with all the evolutions of the program. And now we're going to go ahead and, oh, actually, no, we're not. We're going to continue, Carrie. Yeah,
one more slide.
Yeah, my apologies.
No worries. So I guess switching gears a little bit, I just want to talk a little bit about the departmental research assistantship. And this is actually the same if you've heard Alfred talk about the graduate research assistantship, or you've seen it on our website, same thing, just a slightly different title. And really, this is just an opportunity to get exposure to research, to work on a research project with a climate school affiliated researcher or faculty member. And I'll note that it's a lengthy process in terms of we solicit different projects from researchers. We select from those positions that students will be able to apply to. I will note that we are shifting the timeline for it. Normally, students would apply for these positions. They'd learn about them and apply for them within the first 2 weeks of the semester, which is already hectic enough. So we're actually going to give students the opportunity to apply for these positions over the several weeks during the summer months, so roughly July and August. And this will allow students to put their applications together without having to select classes and going going through the add drop process, which I'll detail more obviously when we talk about registration in the coming months. But essentially, students will apply over the summer, and then the supervisors will have a few weeks to make selections. The hire process is also pretty lengthy. So this entire procedure really will run from July through mid-October. And so I want to highlight that just because it is a change from last year. And also, I know students, before you're coming to grad school, you might choose to travel over the summer months. You might be offline for a while. I just want to make this change in the procedure clear, just so you're aware of it, so you can plan accordingly. Again, we will be sharing details on the timelines, how to apply, when positions will be announced, roughly by June, May to June. So you'll receive all the details you need to plan accordingly. We're very excited about that shift. Positions will also run mid-fall semester through May 31st, and students earn $6,000 for these positions. So I do want to note that this is an opportunity that's available to students. But if if you're not sure if a departmental research assistantship is right for you, or you want to get to campus before you're deciding to commit to any sort of position, there will be other opportunities offered through other centers and programs that we'll share with you throughout the year. We have a weekly newsletter that will share opportunities. We advertise different positions, whether it's like a teaching assistant position or an internship. We advertise those on Slack or via the Climate School blog. So there will be other opportunities. So I just want to make it clear the DRAs are not the only opportunity to get involved on campus. There will be others as well. And I think that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carrie. If we were in person, I would say everybody give a round of applause, but huge thank you. So now transitioning to the summer semester and going into professional development, I'm going to hand it over to Gerald, our phenomenal career development officer, to share more insights about that experience.
Thank you, Alfred. Hi, everybody. I want to congratulate you for being here. So I'm the Career Development Officer for Climate and Society. So I work exclusively with this program. I am coaching students, helping them navigate their job search, while at the same time building out our employer network. I've been working in graduate career placement for 7 years at Columbia, and so I'm delighted to be able to take that experience and help students to work on climate and sustainability issues. And so, as Alfred mentioned, I had done a standalone session on career support and outcomes. So I went to great detail to describe all that. So please check that recording out along with the attached PDF for the career outcomes for the inaugural class. So today I'm just going to do a quick overview of career support and outcomes. And so I'm speaking about the summer semester because, as was mentioned, this is really when students are expected to start applying what they're learning through the program and gaining practical experience. And that experience can take multiple forms. It could be done through a capstone project or an internship, or a full-time position, a full-time permanent position, given that the summer is quite flexible. Actually, last summer, 20% of students started a full-time permanent role in the summer. But just to quickly highlight, so capstone projects are projects that we, the program, source and vet from real organizations. And so we want meaningful, impactful projects that a small group of students can work on. So you'll have the opportunity to see what those options are and select those projects if that's what you choose to do. And sometimes they're really amazing depending on what your particular goals are. So it's a great way to get that sort of practical experience. You're working with a real organization. We also attach a Columbia instructor to every project, so you're getting support from both Columbia and a real organization as you work towards a meaningful deliverable. But we also provide you the flexibility to go ahead and get an internship if that's what you choose to do. Last year, 50% of our students chose to do an internship versus 30% choosing to do a capstone project and 20% stepping into a full-time permanent position. So it's wonderful. Actually, last summer, students in terms of internships went into 26 different fields. So I like to say, like, there really isn't any door you can't open. I'm delighted to report that even beyond that, post the program for the inaugural class, they actually went to 38 different fields. So there's just so many different types of interests represented in just one cohort, and so many opportunities out there, so many organizations just excited to engage. So we can move to the next slide. So these are just some examples of internships that students took on last summer. Actually, I'd love to highlight that a number of these internships extended beyond the internship into a more permanent position. Like We Act for Environmental Justice, that student actually went on to become a state legislative manager. So working more at the state level. Urban Ocean Lab, we still have a student working there as a fellow, and now we have multiple students working there. So this is really wonderful. And for the New York City Mayor's Office as well. And then with the capstone projects, I wanted to highlight Climate Power, for example, was a very interesting project where students were researching climate misinformation and disinformation to inform a multi-million-dollar mitigation campaign. So mitigating against climate misinformation.
And I'll just throw out there, the We Act for Environmental Justice student, Brianna Carbajal. Brianna was served on our current student and alumni panel earlier in the month of March. So there's a recording of Brianna talking about her experiences too. Just throwing that out there, I'll make sure. If you didn't get the recording, let me know.
Thank you. And so this is just a snapshot of what placement looked like for graduates of the inaugural class. I want to highlight that for the private sector, that's a sector that's really growing. It actually now has, like, the number of students going to the private sector has doubled. So it goes to show how quickly things are changing. And I want to mention that actually, in terms of the private sector, in case you're curious, the number one area that students are going into is consulting, as many of these consulting firms that are trying to advise governments and corporations and even NGOs are trying to build up that capacity. They're looking for people with a climate and sustainability lens to advise all of these types of organizations into transitioning into the future. And so again, these are some examples of where our students have gone. So again, I'm here to help students to navigate their search. I think it's wonderful to have somebody sort of in-house at the program level that you can turn to for support. And I really meet with students one-on-one because in a master's program, it's really important to meet students where they are. As I said, students are coming from so many different types of disciplines and also experience levels. I'm also coaching people who are mid-career. So really meeting them and helping them navigate their particular circumstances and help them to do the work that they want to do. It's really important to do that at an individual level. And also I feel like half my job is really just cheerleading, like really encouraging people to push through their search and to not give up hope in terms of finding exactly what they want to do next. So I really meet with students for every type of situation. The network, that's something that is a constant, just continually expanding our network, making sure that all the organizations are familiar with Climate Society. Right now, we currently have a network of about 1,200 climate professionals, and so hoping to double that this year. And so continue on about the network, most of the people that I'm in contact with are hiring managers. So having that direct channel of communication is important. So when hiring managers do share opportunities with me, I'm able to share those with Climate and Society students and able to really highlight and lift their profiles, make sure that they are seen by the hiring team. And then we also have a LinkedIn group for students and alumni. And so with both Slack and LinkedIn, what's great about that is that not only am I able to present opportunities, but so are students and alumni able to share opportunities that they're getting from their network. And then lastly, we always try to put on career events in order to continue to show you just things that you might not have considered, just examples of people working on climate and sustainability. Just this past week, we had the US EPA. We also had the Congressional Research Service. Just want announce that the US EPA is actually starting something new. They're creating a new division on environmental justice. They're establishing that in all regions across the country. And so that's something that's particularly of interest to Climate Society students. And Congressional Research Service was amazing because they're a research group that works exclusively with members of Congress, advising them on complex topics, and in particular, environment and climate. And I think that's the last slide. So again, I just want to congratulate you for being here and just say that there are a lot of opportunities to go after in climate, and would be delighted to work with you to achieve your goals.
Thank you, Gerald. And again, Gerald highlighted, Gerald put together a phenomenal document as it relates to the outcomes for our class of 2022. And I did go ahead and share that as a PDF document with all admitted students. But if you don't see it at the top of your inbox any longer, or you might not have it anymore, please reach out. We want to make sure that you can see those outcomes, because Gerald has done an incredible job. And now I'd like to go ahead and transition over to Kate Jenkins, who is our Senior Associate Director of Financial Aid at the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, where we partner for financial aid resources. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Alfred.
Yeah, no problem.
Let me echo once again, of course, congratulations on your admission. We're excited to have you as part of the Columbia community. You'll find when you get to Columbia that it's sort of mixed in terms of how centralized and decentralized we are. So you will have a lot of resources just at the climate school that will meet so many of your needs. But within the greater institution, there are some things that happen for all schools at Columbia. For example, tuition billing happens centrally. Other types of notification and aid happen centrally. So you'll get information outside of the climate school. Be sure that you have your email and contact information updated. But the first thing that comes to mind for all of you, and the biggest question that we're getting, is what kind of aid can I get? Graduate school is very different than undergraduate. So for those of you who are domestic students and studied here in the States, and even those of you who are international students, your experience at the undergraduate level may have been that there were a lot of different scholarship and fellowship opportunities which you could avail yourself. A lot of external organizations are looking to fund those who are pursuing their first degree. We all support that. And so at the graduate level, there really is just less funding available. So if you've been scouring websites for external fellowship and you're just not finding a lot, or it looks like it's for graduate school, but then you get into the details and it's really for undergrad, it's not you, it's just the nature of how funding works at the graduate level. Here at Columbia and here at the Climate School, you do have some institutional fellowship opportunities. There are climate and society fellowships, which are determined through the admissions process. Also, the Diamondstein Spiegelvogel is another full tuition, full cost of attendance, very competitive fellowship that's offered at the Climate School. Those candidates have been identified. So if you did not receive information about that, that process is currently in the next stage. Climate and society fellowships may shift throughout the year, but most of those determinations have happened. Other funding opportunities, as you've heard, might come about as you pursue the program, as you go through your studies. A lot of external organizations have deadlines in November and March, so there could be opportunities that you are finding now for next fall or spring, and others that you'll find that you would be applying for in the fall for later in the spring. Unfortunately, some of those opportunities would have been for last year for next fall. So it really, really does depend on the external organization. From Columbia as well, there are a number of inter-school fellowships which are just being announced, and we'll have a deadline sometime in June. So that opportunity will be available and shared with students in the coming days. And those are very small awards. A lot of what you'll find in terms of fellowships for graduate level studies are small awards, a couple $1,000s. And so often students are trying to cobble together different funding sources. As a graduate student, unfortunately, the reality is that almost 80% of students are borrowing some type of loan during their studies. And so looking at those resources as things that you may need to consider is certainly something you should consider now so that you know what those options are as you go into the program. Here at Columbia, graduate students also do, if you are a U.S. citizen or permanent resident, have the opportunity to do federal work study. So that differs from some of the other research assistant opportunities. Federal work study is an opportunity where you are funded partially by a grant from the Department of Education and funded by the department on campus that you're working for. And so there are some resources on Columbia's websites about how to find work study eligible positions, and we'll share a little bit of that as well from our website and information coming out later this week. Again, for those of you who are U.S. citizens and permanent residents, you also have access to 2 types of federal loans, and I'll detail a little bit more about those later. U.S. citizens, permanent residents, and our international students can all take advantage of private educational loans if that's a good fit for them, and we'll talk about what to consider when you're looking at private loans in a couple of slides. Next slide. So part of what you have to figure out is how much this costs. It's this wonderful, all of these experiences they're selling you on at the beginning, right? And the reality is that, you know, there is an expense associated with this experience. There are some direct costs in the financial aid cost of attendance. Those costs are broken down between those that are direct and billed to you from the university, and generally all students who are in the program would be paying those costs, versus indirect costs, which are considered those expenses that you might have some flexibility over. So those that you would think of as your own personal budget. Some of those things you may not feel are flexible, like whatever rent you have if you're living here in the city already. But others, there could be ways that you can shift your own budget to accommodate and reduce what we would estimate for those indirect costs to be. But when we talk about the cost of attendance and how much you can receive in total in financial aid from all sources, we're talking about a combination of both the direct costs that everyone has to pay and the indirect costs that might vary from student to student. Next slide. So here's an estimate, and the reason it's an estimate is because tuition is actually finalized in early summer by the university trustees. So these are the estimates that we expect for students. Based on this program, you have full-time enrollment in both fall and spring, and half-time enrollment in summer, your final semester. And so these are pretty close estimates of what you would expect to pay for each of those terms. If for some reason you needed to take a leave of absence, or you had a reduced enrollment, or you changed your enrollment in the program, this would be different. Your tuition is based on the enrollment category in which you're enrolled. So again, in the first 2 semesters, you'll be a full-time student. In your 3rd semester, you'll be a half-time student. So the tuition is adjusted accordingly. You'll also have a number of fees associated with your enrollment. So some of those are for access to resources at the university. We are going to have a session on Friday from the financial aid office that will break down these fees more specifically. But I've separated health insurance out from the fees because health insurance is one fee that if you have comparable health insurance coverage, otherwise you can exclude. If not, all students, international students and domestic students, if you're enrolled at least half-time, are required to have comparable health insurance from the university. So the option to waive out of that cost is available typically the first week of July. And then there's a deadline to waive out of the health insurance process by the end of September. So if you have other health insurance coverage already that's comparable, you can apply to have that waived, and that would be one cost that you could reduce. So when we look total overall for the whole course of the program, it's around $88,000 that you would have in directly billed charges. So this is what by semester you would break down in terms of how much you would need to pay each semester to the university over the course of time. And for the way that the university bills tuition and fees is just in advance of each semester, you'll receive a tuition bill, and it's due usually within the first couple of weeks of that semester. And so for the fall, the tuition bills are scheduled to go out in mid-August and will be due in mid to late September. For spring, they'll go out in December and be due in late January, early February. And then the summer is a little off cycle because summer is a shorter semester. But the summer billing notifications typically go out sometime in late May and are due in early mid-June. So if you're planning a schedule around when you have to have certain resources available, you can plan by semester and not for the entirety of the program. Next slide. These are estimates for the indirect expenses. So things like food and housing and your personal expenses, which would include things like transportation. Those are estimates that we have determined at the university are reasonable expenses for a student living a modest student lifestyle. So you'll see that it's broken down into different amounts for each semester because it's based on the length of time each semester has. As you're planning your own personal budget and trying to determine your overall financing needs or funding needs, this is an area where you have a lot more flexibility. Now, food and housing, if you are, for example, in university residence housing, that is billed directly to your financial aid account, to your student account rather, where your tuition is billed. So that's a little bit different, but for most students who are living off campus, you're managing those expenses separately. If you are receiving financial aid to cover the total cost of attendance, then you'll receive any refund that would be allocated for your living expenses at the beginning of each of those semesters, provided that you have whatever financing or financial aid in place already. So, for example, if you were expecting to use some loans for living expenses for the fall semester, if everything is in place in mid-August when your billing statement is issued, you'll see an anticipated credit for those funds. No funds for loans, whether those are federal or private, are released to the university more than 10 days before classes start. So as you're arriving on campus, you need to allocate some resources for your first month at least of expenses if you're planning to use any type of financial aid to fund those expenses. Because in most cases, students are receiving their refunds usually in the first few weeks of classes, but depending on if there was any hiccup in your registration, or maybe you didn't clear your immunization hold in time and your registration hasn't moved through, your financial aid could be delayed. So plan to have funding through your own personal resources upon arrival for at least the first month of your expenses. So overall, if you were looking to cover the full cost of attendance and your individual expenses were similar to these indirect expenses, then your total cost for the program would be roughly $136,000. So it's a big number, but let's talk a little bit about what the different loan options are and how those would work, which I think is the next slide. So for these first two options, these are for US citizens, permanent residents, or other eligible non-citizens, such as those who have asylum status, or temporary asylum seekers. So for the first type of loan that you have access to as a citizen or permanent resident, it's called a federal direct unsubsidized loan. All of these loans, unfortunately, begin to accrue interest from the disbursement date on the disbursed amount. So unlike loans that you may have had access to as an undergrad, where the government was paying the interest while you were in school and the loan stayed at the same amount the entire time you were enrolled, as a graduate student, all of these loans will begin to accrue interest from the time that the funds arrive to pay any tuition or to fund any living expenses. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about when you want to borrow and how much you want to borrow. The first type of federal loan is called a direct unsubsidized loan. Basically, you complete the FAFSA. There's no credit check. If you're a US citizen, permanent resident, you're not currently in default on any federal loans, and you haven't already borrowed the cap on this loan, which is $138,500, then you get the loan. It's as close to a guaranteed loan as you can get without technically being guaranteed. But it is capped at $20,500 per academic year. And there's a little fee that they skim off the top, which is currently 1.057%, which means if you were borrowing the federal direct unsubsidized loan for the full year, you'd get $10,142 applied to the fall semester, $10,142 applied to the spring semester, and then magically, summer gets to be treated as its own academic year, and you would get a full $20,500 gross amount for the summer. The interest rates and fees for the federal loans adjust at different times during the year. So the fee that's currently associated with the 2 federal loans may be adjusted this coming October. We'll probably know sometime in July or August if that fee is being adjusted. It's based on sequestration, which was decades ago. The current fixed interest rate for the federal direct unsubsidized loan is 6.54%. That interest rate will reset July 1st, and any loans that you take out for this program will be at the new higher interest rate that's published for post-July 1. Typically, we know what that is in mid-May. It's based on the 10-year treasury bill plus a spread. If we looked at what that interest rate might be fixed at post-July 1 in the last couple of days, it will probably be about 7%. So it does look to be that the interest rates are going up, which is what's happening all over. The Federal Graduate Plus loan is the second type of federal loan that you have access to. And unlike the graduate or the direct unsubsidized loan, there is a credit inquiry, but it's a very modest credit inquiry. So they're looking to make sure that you have nothing really egregious or adverse in your credit history in the last couple of years, meaning you don't have a bankruptcy or a collection over $2,823, or some really bad tax liens, things like that. So really big ticket items. If you do have any of those items, there's actually an option to add an endorser or a cosigner, or to appeal if you have resolved whatever that credit MAR is. For the Graduate Plus loan, you can borrow up to the total cost of attendance, less the direct unsubsidized loan, which you have to maximize, and you would because it's more favorable, and less any other fellowships or sponsorships that you may be receiving. So you can't borrow against fellowship or scholarship, but ideally you're all borrowing as little as you need to anyway. And so this isn't sort of something that comes up very often. The current fixed interest rate for the Graduate Plus loan is 7.54%. It's always 1 percentage point higher. That means that if the direct unsub is fixed around 7%, we expect the Grad Plus to be around 8%, which is actually close to the cap that's instituted for that loan anyway. The Grad Plus, however, does have a much more significant fee, and that fee is deducted from the disbursement. So depending on the amount that you're borrowing, you may need to account for that in determining what you need for your borrowing. And we'll have tools available for you to make that decision so that you understand how the fee will impact the net amount that gets applied to your account. Private loans. Private loans really vary. There are a number of different lenders out there. If you are an international student and you have someone who is willing to be a cosigner that is a creditworthy US citizen or permanent resident, you will actually have access to a number of different private lender options. For domestic students, there are a number of different private lenders out there. The university does maintain a sort of suggested lender list, but it is not exhaustive, and your peers and other website options may be able to provide you with a number of different tools. The website Credible sometimes students are using the website Credible and other websites where you can compare different private loan interest rates. Private rates are going up, and so we expect that they will probably hover somewhere around the direct unsubsidized loan and Graduate Plus loan for domestic students who have great credit and or are adding a cosigner. Most of these loans have a tiered structure. So if you have the best credit and you're applying with a cosigner, you'll probably get the most favorable rates. But a creditworthy cosigner is not always necessary to get those rates if you yourself have great credit. For our international students, for those of you who had already started the application process, because that is certainly available, there are currently 2 known no cosigner options. Prodigy Finance and Empower Financing. Now, we understood that Prodigy did not have the climate school listed. That's been corrected. So if you had been in the process with Prodigy and were not able to locate the climate school as an option for your program, that is resolved and you should now be able to apply with them. We do encourage international students who are considering these options to apply now, even if ultimately you decide that you want the loan to come only for the spring semester. The application process can take some time, and it helps you to understand what amount might be available, because with international no cosigner loans, they're much more stringent in determining the amount that you might qualify for. And so that process can take a little bit of time. If you've not begun that and are considering taking a loan, I would encourage you to start that process now so that you understand what your options would be. For those, again, who are looking to borrow private loans or federal loans, the timing is a little bit more delayed if you're not an international student looking for a no cosigner loan. Next slide. And the process is actually being updated as we speak. So we're hoping by next week, we will be launching the loan request form, which replaces the instructions that are currently on our site about the 6-step loan process. So it'll be a much more streamlined process, one form to rule them all. If you're looking to apply for federal work study, any of the federal loans, or you are applying for a private loan, it will be just this one form that you'll link to in order to let us know that those are the aid sources that you are taking advantage of. If you want to get a head start before that form becomes available, if you're a federal borrower, you can complete the FAFSA. If you've already completed the FAFSA, we'll probably have access to those results in the next several weeks. The federal loan and private loan process actually does not start until later in April and May. And part of that is for the private loans, the credit inquiry that occurs can expire if we certify that too soon in advance of when you're going to arrive, and you would have to start that process over again. So there's intentional timing on this, but I understand for many of you, it feels like you're missing out on something. You haven't missed anything. It's just a little bit later than you might want it to be. For private loan borrowers who are considering that, you can apply directly with a lender right now. And then again, we'll start that certification process later. So you don't need to wait to initiate several of the steps, but know that you won't get any responses until later in April or possibly early May, and that the actual loans that you're borrowing are not going to come to the university until late August, early September. Now, our office is hosting a much more in-depth virtual financial aid session where we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about some of these options and other on-campus work opportunities that you could take a look at. That's going to be this Friday at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. It will be recorded, so if you're not able to attend, we're going to be sharing that. But know that there is another opportunity to go into greater detail about the financial aid options that are available for you at the greater institution and through GSAS. And I think that's all we have.
Thank you so much, Kate. I really appreciate it. Kate is hanging back just for the Q&A section. I'm sure this stimulated a great number of questions. So again, thank you, Kate, for going into detail on financial aid opportunities that relates to the MA programs. Now I am going to transition and allow one of our phenomenal members of our learning community, Niklaus Smith, to talk a little bit more about other resources at Columbia. Niklaus?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Alfred. I just wanted to reiterate my congratulations to everybody. I probably interacted with a lot of you through one-on-one appointments or corresponding over email. So it's nice to make an additional connection and see all of you again. Yeah, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the additional resources that we have access to as MA Climate Society students, as well as facilities. We have 5 academic research libraries on campus, and those are free and open access to publications, great to supplement any kind of research or coursework you're doing. In addition to having lifetime access to any of those library facilities for the rest of your time, as long as you have a Columbia ID and active login information, you can access any of the libraries and all of the open access information. We have an extensive events calendar that we have access to as students to be able to attend talks, different workshops dispensed through the climate school or campus-wide. So there's truly so many opportunities to get involved. Pictured down here at the bottom right corner is actually Alok Sharma, a part of the Columbia World Leaders Forum. He's a member of parliament. He was the president of COP26. So the World Leaders Forum hosted him to talk about the outcomes of COP26, which we know yielded the Glasgow Climate Pact, which is really influential. So yeah, there's just truly so many things to kind of take advantage of for personal, professional, and academic enrichment to kind of dispense great networking and connections, not only exclusive to the Columbia community, but as well as the New York City community at large. And finally, the Wednesday Weekly is our weekly Columbia Climate School newsletter that's dispensed out to us. It's a kind of a collection of current Columbia Climate School news, job, internship, and on-campus employment opportunities, as well as the State of the Planet blog, which is through the Earth Institute. So another really great kind of ability to connect with other sustainability disciplines on campus as well. I suppose we can go to the next slide. This is the forum where I'm currently, and I think a lot of my colleagues are as well. It's the kind of the main program office for the Columbia Climate School, and where a lot of our core courses are housed, as well as a large auditorium where a lot of events are held, like I previously mentioned. The Columbia Climate School is actually the university partner for New York City Climate Week that happened last fall. So there were a lot of events on campus that we had access to, and the forum is kind of a great collaborative working space and event space for us to take advantage of during our time here. So next slide, please. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about the housing stuff, which is not the most exciting or easy thing to navigate. I went through this process last year. I am a current student, so I am happy to kind of dispense a little bit of the resources that I've kind of come across that might be helpful for anyone. So needless to say, the student demand for housing regularly exceeds the allotment. We really see that Columbia residential housing is available to students, couples, and people with dependent children that are kind of moving into the city. So there's a very limited basis for the housing dispensed by the university. If you plan to apply for Columbia housing and you have not done so, you should submit the online application as soon as possible. It opened up March 15th. So in order to apply, you will need to have your sign-up code and PID number, both of which were provided in your acceptance letter. So if you think you may want to apply for the Columbia's provisional housing, it's best to do it now because the timeliness of your application will kind of impact your allocation. So you can always decline an offer for housing if you happen to receive one, but it's great to sign up and submit an application just in case like the period closes or you're kind of in flux on what to do. So I'll just note again that only students who have accepted their offer of admission, paid their deposit, and activated their uni actually have access to apply for the housing portal. So yeah, in addition to that, there's a lot of off-campus housing assistance. Columbia has its own kind of off-campus housing assistance office, which is kind of for on a consultation basis for hosting workshops on the apartment search and process, and kind of also maintains a list of available units for students. The International House is also a really, really great opportunity. I did not know about this until I moved here, so I wish I would have known about it sooner, but it's an independent nonprofit organization that provides furnished housing near the Forum and near Columbia's main campus. So I really, really recommend checking out International House. You don't have to be an international student to apply. It's available for both domestic and international students. So it's a really, really great resource. And yeah, Zillow, Street Easy, these are the commercial apartment search engine platforms that are really great. I found my apartment on Street Easy, side note. So I think there are some success stories that come out of it. And then finally, I was able to kind of find this Columbia off-campus housing Facebook group page last year, and it really does connect you with other Columbia students, people in the community that you're able to kind of connect with over social media to see if there are any openings in any apartments, maybe for someone that's going into a year-long program like us. So there's definitely a lot of available options that are not just dispensed through Columbia's provisional housing, which is pretty scarce, admittedly. So yeah, I'm happy to share any of these resources, and these are all hyperlinks. So once you all have access to the presentation or anything, you're able to kind of have these to click on and interact with. So yeah, happy to answer any questions during the Q&A about it. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Niklaus. And then these are some important program dates we just wanted to highlight. So tomorrow is our on-campus admitted students day. For those of you that are in the tri-state area and already registered, phenomenal. Understandably, many of you are abroad, so coming to New York is challenging for that day. I will say this, that we are recording the current student panel as well as our faculty panel tomorrow. So we will make sure to share the recordings of those panels to all of our admitted students. Something also very exciting, Carrie Shimkus has been working very hard on evolving our registration process. And so there are plans for registration to open up by mid-July to allow you to register for certainly your core courses and begin your kind of elective journey hunt. Last week of August is going to be when orientation will be occurring. We don't have the exact date yet, but just anticipate last week of August. It is mandatory orientation. September 5th is the first day of classes. December 22nd is the last day of the fall semester. Then moving into the spring, you get a nice little break. January 16th is the first day. May 10th is the last day of spring semester. And then commencement week is going to be occurring between May 10th and May 15th. And then the first day of the summer semester is May 20th, and the last day of summer is August 9th. We should emphasize that students officially receive their conferred degrees in October. So for students joining us in the fall of 2023, you will be receiving your diplomas in October of 2024. And I do want to note some of these are tentative dates. And that concludes our session. I do want to open us up to questions now. And Jillian has been diligently looking at the Q&A. I've been seeing a lot of the questions that looks like have been answered, it sounds like, but I'd love to open it up to just make sure that we address questions, especially questions that maybe are directed about financial aid for Kate Jenkins, or maybe career development for Gerald. Or perhaps even just, program vision for Professor Ting. So are there any interesting questions that came in? Forgive me, I'm also sharing my screen, so I was being very diligent not to sit and look at the questions. I didn't want to block anybody's view. But is there any questions that we want to go ahead and highlight at this stage?
Yeah, so we have some questions about visa status, which I think would be a good thing to touch on. I don't particularly know about that, but perhaps someone else in the group might know.
So all questions relating to student visas should be directed to our International Students and Scholars Office. They have very detailed resources as it relates to applying for the I-20. That is going to be your first step in securing an F1 student visa. So you have to first apply for the I-20. Applying for the I-20 usually requires that you also provide proof of the necessary funding to live and study here at Columbia University. Once you do secure your I-20, you would then go ahead and make an appointment with your US Embassy, have an interview to then secure your student visa. But all questions relating to the student visa process should be directed to the ISSO office. And Jillian, if you can go ahead and type that in the chat, the ISSO website and their email, that would be phenomenal.
Got it.
Any other questions?
Let's see here.
I saw a question about core course size and taking electives over the summer. I'll just note that the core courses have two sections. So the class is split into two, and you register for one of the sections of the core course, depending on what your elective schedule might be. This coming fall semester, our core courses will be offered at different times on different days, just to accommodate different schedules. And there will be a lot of outside of class opportunities for students to engage. So we've definitely hosted some events throughout the semester and throughout the year. We'll definitely have some events around orientation, so you can start to get to know your class. And then I think a lot of the courses also have a lot of group work where you'll get to know different individuals within your cohort. And then I saw a question about electives this summer, or taking electives during the summer. You're welcome to take classes or electives while also enrolled in the internship or capstone. We're actually going to be offering a few new electives this summer that our students will be able to take. And they'll also, throughout the year, electives being offered at 3 credits or 1.5, so that students can also piece those together depending on what sort of educational journey they want to embark on.
I also saw a question about part-time option. I don't know, Alfred, do you want to go over that?
Absolutely, yes. So we do, if you are interested in enrolling as a part-time student this year, please send me an individual email. I already have a running list. We are going to have a abbreviated kind of application for part-time approval, although our program is now approved to allow part-time enrollment, but we first need to have more of an in-depth conversation with you. One thing that we have to highlight is that our core courses, we cannot guarantee that they are occurring in the late afternoons or evenings. So we need to ensure that you as an enrolling student understand that there is a strong chance, in fact, not a strong chance, there will be a chance that you are going to be taking courses during the working hours. So we are going to be reaching out to a select number of students that have already reached out to me as about part-time enrollment. And provide further instructions in the very, very near future, I promise. So I'll make sure to type that in as well. But everybody should have my email, but it's aa3240@columbia.edu. Were there any financial aid questions for Kate out of curiosity?
There are, it looks like, a couple of questions about loans and interest rates and whether you should fund everything with loans.
Yeah.
So private loan interest rates, the average rates are really hard for us to be able to say because the information that schools receive doesn't include the interest rates that students are receiving on those loans. But anecdotally, I can tell you that students have self-reported in the past interest rates ranging on private loans for a fixed interest rate in the 7 to 9% range now. So very similar again to what those federal loans are. For our international students, it's probably a 9 to 12% interest rate. And then for those who are a little more risk savvy or less risk averse, maybe, private loans that have variable interest rates are going to be slightly lower, but really right now in this environment, they're not significantly lower. And so we're probably seeing rates in the 5 to 7% range for variable rates on private loans. But for those international students, if you have a cosigner, you'll have access to a lower rate possibility, but not necessarily any guarantee of a significantly lower rate.
Thank you, Kate. And one of the students, I'll just answer quickly live, asked about if there are, what are the steps essentially? I'm a US citizen, when should I expect to begin the next steps? The next step would be, so just to run through, is to accept your offer of admission. You would do so in your application. The step would be to include accepting the offer, submitting a $2,000 tuition deposit. I do want to emphasize that $2,000 tuition deposit goes towards your fall 2023 tuition. It is a non-refundable and non-transferable tuition deposit. What do I mean by that? We do have a number of students that have also applied to maybe other programs at Columbia University, and they say, oh, can I transfer that tuition deposit to another professional school at Columbia? The answer is unfortunately no. So it's a non-refundable, non-transferable tuition deposit. When you submit that tuition deposit, a uni should be generated within the next 36 hours. You will then get an automated email from Columbia Climate School's Office of Admissions with your uni and instructions on how to activate that uni. And then, as Nick Klaus noted, that would then allow you to, for example, apply for Columbia University housing. The uni is the king, is the key to the castle, so to speak. You need your uni for so many different things in terms of, accessing Carrie Shimkus and the course registration process. Uni is king. Applying for housing, uni is king. So, the uni is the critical component, and you do not get the uni until you've actually accepted your offer of admission, which includes submitting the $2,000 tuition deposit.
And I also saw a question about PhD, those who are interested in applying to PhD, the kind of support you'll get, aside obviously from our wonderful Gerald, as a career officer here. I'd like to emphasize that all students will be assigned an advisor, faculty advisor. So this will be a good resource to utilize. So you can talk to the faculty advisor if you're interested in pursuing a PhD. And in terms of, the kind of courses you might want to take, and there are PhD level courses that's open to our students. For example, Department of Earth and Environmental Science, if you're interested more in the climate science side of things. And SEPA, has a PhD program. There are a lot of potential courses that you might want to take to prepare for yourself in order to apply to the PhD program. And you can also talk to the faculty advisor about the kind of field that you might be interested in getting into, and where are the best places to apply to. So I've, I often talk to my advisees, many of them did try that route and apply to PhD, and I was very happy to provide one-on-one counsel in terms of, what would be the best next steps.
Thank you, Mingfang. And one of our students, Pinar, I see in the questions asked a little bit more about disaster risk management, the specialization that we just announced. Can they take additional courses? Stay tuned. We are going to be releasing additional information as it relates to the specialization curriculum and the courses that are required to obtain that specialization. But I will say, Pinar, that one of the members of our faculty panel tomorrow, which we will be recording. I know that you're abroad right now, and I'm sure it would be very difficult to attend the on-campus session tomorrow. One of the faculty members on that panel is the chief architect of the disaster risk management specialization underway. So stay tuned for that panel. We will be sharing a recording, and I'm certain there's going to be more details discussed during that panel as well.
And I see there are multiple inquiries about salaries. And so, as I mentioned, from the students who just graduated, they went into 38 different fields. So it is going to vary based on what field you go into, what your role is, what, the years of experience you're bringing to that position. So if I want to generalize, when I am advising employers, when it comes to people who are early in their careers, I suggest to employers that students will typically start out at around $75,000 a year. Those are for early career folks, although from this graduating class, I saw a number of early career folks make six figures. So it's like their first position. So those roles were in consulting and climate tech. So that's to give you some how there's quite a range. And even in the city, I had some folks work here in New York City for the city. And so those could range anywhere from the mid 50s all the way near to 90,000. So again, there's a lot of variability because people have very different interests and they're coming with different levels of experience.
Excellent. Thanks, Gerald. There was another question that I saw. One of our admitted international students asked if they should accept the offer, can they accept the offer now? But in case they're unable to secure funding, could they then potentially defer? The answer is yes. I mean, we understand things do happen. I do strongly encourage you, though, before accepting the offer, you really should have a better understanding of, is it feasible? So feel free to send me an email separately, and we can have a little bit more of a one-on-one conversation as it relates to that. I just want to make sure that when accepting the offer that you feel that this is going to be a realistic enrollment time for you. So just wanting to highlight that. Sorry.
I just wanted to answer a couple questions about the cohort, and also we talked earlier about sharing our elective journeys, Niklaus and I. So as far as the cohort environment goes, the current cohort that Niklaus and I are in is 78 students. I believe that we're anticipating this incoming cohort to be something in the ballpark of something like 85 to 90. Is that right, Alfred? Something to that effect?
Yeah, we're around 90 students for anticipating.
Okay. So going into that, so that's the average, the size that we're looking for. And then for the class sizes for your core courses, you can anticipate that each section, which there should be 2 of them, will be about half of the cohort in either section. So that gives you a really good opportunity to be able to interact with your cohort in smaller chunks and things, which is really nice. So the class sizes are totally manageable as far as you don't feel like so you're not in a lecture hall of 300 students like some of us were in undergrad. So, and then also going into our electives, like I wanted to like reinforce this idea that the electives are really completely up to you. Aside from the new specializations that were just announced, the elective journey is completely yours. So I'm sure that Niklaus and I have taken radically different electives, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But like the electives that I've taken this year, I took a terrestrial paleoclimate class, which talked about the paleoclimate record on like solid Earth. I'm taking a Cenozoic paleooceanography class, so paleoclimate from the ocean. I'm in a GIS class right now, specializing in sustainability infrastructure, which is really interesting. And also taking sea level rise, which is dealing with like coding surrounding modeling sea level rise, and also the like humanitarian impacts of sea level rise across the world. So like I've taken a lot of different classes. You can tell that I kind of have a specialty in paleoclimate, but we can take whatever we want. You don't have to take just climate and society offered electives. You don't have to take things just in earth environmental sciences. I'm sure Niklaus will talk about his choices in electives. So I just wanted to touch on those sorts of things as far as the cohort environment goes.
Thank you. Yeah, Niklaus, could you share a little bit what you've just taken, because it's so different.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Kind of deviating away from what Jillian was referencing. I have come from a more policy background, so I've gotten out of the climate school for most of my electives and kind of explored electives in the School of International and Public Affairs and the Sustainability Management program. I took environmental policy and management last semester through SEPA, and I really, really enjoyed that course. And I took energy decarbonization this semester, along with critical urban infrastructure for sustainable development. And I'm taking a course in the School of Engineering. It's a mechanical engineering course for building decarbonization, like energy retrofit systems, which has been pretty interesting. And I'm taking a UN development system course as well through SEPA. So there's a lot of different opportunities to get involved with different electives around campus. The climate school electives are wonderful, but if you want to meet other folks on campus that are a part of sustainability disciplines, I really recommend branching out and meeting other folks on campus, because that's a huge resource that's also available to you.
There is a question, I don't know, Mingfang, if you, this might be an interesting one. A student asked, although a thesis dissertation isn't required by the program, have students in the past worked on a thesis in addition to the coursework? If so, can you explain this a bit, or if possible to do this, is there an advisor? Or, could you, I don't know if there, I know there's no thesis requirement, of course, but we do have some students deeply interested in research.
Yes, I definitely can talk about it. The program doesn't have, as you said, no requirement for a thesis option, but if you choose to do a summer internship and work on the thesis research, you definitely can do that. And additionally, there's also opportunity for you to do research in the course during the semester, if you want to do, focus on research throughout the year and produce a thesis or publication out of it. You can choose to do independent study. If you can find a supervisor who's willing to work with you on the research project you're interested, you could create your own course. So in addition to those wonderful courses, electives that you've already heard, and from Niklaus and Jillian, what they are taking, you can also design your own if that's fit your interests. So that is definitely a possibility. A few of our students did take that option and work on research throughout the year and eventually publish the paper with the supervisor.
Thank you, Professor Ting.
And I see another question about, can we submit a preference for advisors? Currently, I think, Carrie, you might be able to tell a little bit more. The current system is that we assign you two advisors, and Carrie is looking at your CV, trying to match, the best she could. But if you do have a very strong preference, I imagine you could email Carrie and let her know, I guess.
Yeah, I think we do our best to take into account preferences, but depending on the class size and the number of advisors, sometimes it's sort of everyone's assigned at random. But I think one thing that I've seen students do is, even if they're assigned a particular advisor, even if there's a faculty member that they wanted to connect with, they would go to office hours, still create a relationship or a mentorship with that faculty member, even if they weren't their specific advisor. And I think that would certainly be welcome as well, even if they're not your specific assigned advisor at the start of the year.
That's a very good point. I do interact with a lot of other students who are not my direct advisees. So yes, that's definitely true.
So, and for the purpose of time, if we can maybe just ask one more broad question. Is there any question that Niklaus or Jillian, you see that maybe would be helpful for the entire group? I do see one that's very specific. Unfortunately, Shagan, we are not the scholarship with which you are referring to. I think it's we're not on that specific scholarship list.
It's not a question about Alfred. I do want to speak to the fact that I know you had answered the question about, what are the next steps after students accept their offer of admission. Over the summer, there will be sort of a transition between hearing from Alfred's office into hearing more from the program as you transition to a current student. And so a lot of the details regarding the curriculum and registration and DRAs, we will be sharing as June and July and August approach. So I do want to make that clear that a lot of what you've heard about today, there will be more information shared from the program side as you start to consider what you might want to take and how you want to sort of shape your program next year.
Okay, excellent. Well, for time purposes, I just want to say thank you to all of our participants. I can't thank Professor Ting enough, Kate Jenkins, Gerald, Carrie. Thank you all for attending this session and kind of lending your voices to our accepted students. As always, if there are outstanding questions that you did not get answered, please email the admissions inbox. We will try to our best to get those questions answered for you. And a huge congratulations to the entire attendees today on your acceptance to the MA in Climate and Society. Thank you so much for attending today. And for those of you that are joining us tomorrow, we are so looking forward to welcoming you to the forum. We'll make sure for those of you who cannot attend, those panels that I specifically referenced will absolutely be recorded and shared with everybody. So thank you again, everybody, and have a great rest of the day and or evening, depending where you joined us from. Take care.
Can I just say that we, could you put the contact information slide back up? And also correct me if I'm wrong, but did Kate, you say that there was going to be another info session for financial aid coming up this week?
There will, yes, on
Yeah.
Friday at 10 a.m. And they have, I believe, received the announcement already because we've had several RSVPs. But if you didn't get that,
let me know.
Reach out. Yeah.
Absolutely, let me know. And so I will just make sure to share this before we officially log off. There's our contact details. You can reach me and Jillian and Niklaus at admissions@climate.columbia.edu. Carrie's and the administrator's inbox is climatesocietyadmin@climate.columbia.edu. Kate can be reached at the GSAS FinAid email there. And then, if you do guys have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us, Gerald and Mingfang's emails as well, of course. All right, well, again, thank you to all of our participants and congratulations, everybody. I sincerely hope to see all of you in the fall here. And And I look forward to continuing the conversations over the coming months. Take care.
Great. Bye-bye.